take your seats, the nearest seat. Thank you. Honorable members, I have a petition regarding the release of the free day secondary education capitation deficit for the academic year 2019 and the financial years 2020-2021 to 2022-2023 by the National Treasury. Honorable members, Article 119 of the Constitution accords any person the right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. Honorable members, in this regard, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from one Mr. Indimuli Kahi, OGW, of PO Box 20658, 0020 Nairobi, the National Chairperson, Kenya Secondary Schools Heads Association, KESHA, a professional organization comprising over 10,000 head teachers drawn from public secondary schools in Kenya. The petitioner states that the association appreciates the continued support the government has accorded schools through the free day secondary education program since its inception in 2008 by granting capitation per annum. The program has greatly enhanced access, retention, and completion rates in secondary schools. The petition explains that in 2008, the rate per learner was 10,625. This was increased to 12,870 in 2015, and then to Kenya shillings 22,244 in 2018. In addition, public secondary schools were only allowed to charge boarding fees as said by the Minister of Education. Honorable members, the petitioner is concerned that despite the increase in capitation per learner, the Government of Kenya subsidy for the free day secondary program has consistently been lower than the actual enrollment. Among reasons that have caused this worrying trend include increase in enrollment in January while utilizing the budget allocations made in November, December of the previous year. The fact that a number of students have experienced challenges in obtaining birth certificates and are therefore not captured on the NEMIS platform, which the Minister of Education utilizes to disburse capitation to schools based on the number of students captured, and partial disbursement of the approved budget capitation since 2018. The petitioner therefore prays that the National Assembly compels the Treasury to release capitation at the approved rate of 22,244 per learner for the year 2022-23-24 and release the deficit from 2019 amounting to 54,220,185,855 to enable schools to pay the ever-rising pending bills. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further that the matters raised in this petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petition in accordance with the Standing Orders 2272. I thank you. Yes, Minority Leader. You want to speak to the petition?
Yes.
Yes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yes, actually, I've listened keenly to the petition, and it raises very, very grave issues. First and foremost, let me thank the KESHA. KESHA is an established association of head teachers of secondary schools, and they've been very instrumental in management of our schools across the country. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I'm saying the petition is raising very grave issues is that the government must have done some costing for it to have arrived at the figures you just referred to, way back from 2018 or 2008. The Speaker, it is true that even as we speak, even though now schools are closed, a number of schools are struggling to make ends meet. Whereas on one hand, head teachers are not allowed to charge extra fees. On the other hand, the government has consistently failed to remit the capitation money. So how then do you expect these heads to run their schools? That's the question that really needs to be answered. How does the government expect secondary schools to run without money if the heads cannot charge extra fees? And yet, the money that's supposed to come from the national treasury is not coming. So how then do you want our secondary schools to be run? This is an issue, Mr. Speaker, that calls for serious introspection, not only on the part of the government, but indeed on the part of the whole citizenry. Mr. Speaker, this House has got a duty to address this matter with finality. This House must address this matter with finality. Leave alone even the issue of the arrears. The arrears are, the figures you're talking about are monumental, in tens of billions of shillings. I can see the chairman of the Education Committee, my friend is looking at me, Corneli Serem. Is it? Meli. Meli, you know, is my neighbor up there in Kisumu. You know, unless you want us to continue burying our heads in the sand, we must either say that the government is unable to support secondary education by way of capitation, or allow the head teachers to charge extra fees with attendant ramifications. And therefore, in a nutshell, I want to say this petition is timely and it needs to be processed expeditiously. In fact, I would suggest that in addition to the Committee on Education held by my friend Meli, we also need perhaps to incorporate some more people so that we have this issue dealt with in a holistic manner. Thank you.
KJ.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. And this is an important petition, Mr. Speaker, because it goes beyond the disbursements and the delays in disbursements. Mr. Speaker, we as a country will not be able to finance the support of students whose numbers we do not know, Mr. Speaker. And that's why the drive towards digital identification and the digital registration of students becomes extremely important, Mr. Speaker. Previously, the government has been disbursing monies to schools without even ascertaining the exact number of students in any given institution. It has been guesswork, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the government would be able to identify an individual at birth, such a government is able to plan for the life of the individual, not only through schools, but even as they come into the working environment and as they go into becoming an economic contributor in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, as the Petitions Committee looks at this, as the Education Committee looks at this, they've also got to be able to come up with a system that establishes the exact number of learners in our institutions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Oyula Joseph. Is that Joseph Oyula? Yes. Give him the mic.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I was not prepared for this petition.
Oh, you are on the screen. Kemei. Beatrice Kemei, are you on the screen for this? Those of you who are not interested in this petition, can you delog yourselves off the screen? Interventions. Posing David. Where is Posing?
I'm here.
Yes.
Of course, you know, Mr. Speaker, I was prepared to lay a paper, but Of course, I can say something. Speaker, this is a very important petition, as members said, but I'm asking myself, does that require a petition, Speaker? Doesn't require a petition. It's common knowledge. Where is the minister in charge of education in this country?
Any Kenyan has the right to petition this house,
what
whether
I'm
it's
saying,
common
Speaker.
knowledge or not.
I thank you, Speaker. But that is an indictment, Speaker, to the Minister of Education. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't require a Kenyan to be able to go, think, write a petition, send to you, Speaker, and you read on the floor of the House. That is an indictment to the Minister for Education. And therefore, Speaker, my only contribution to this petition is it should go to the Leader of Majority, Honorable Speaker, not the Petition Committee, not the Committee on Education, so that the spokesman of government in the House can pick up this issue and implement more or quickly, more than a petition, Speaker. I would wish that you direct that this petition should go to the Leader of Majority so that for quick intervention, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Didymus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support these very important and grave issues that are being raised by the petitioner. However, Honorable Speaker, I feel like the committee should urgently and expeditiously, the Committee on Education, they should engage Treasury in liaison with the relevant committee, so that as the petition committee will be proceeding with this petition, they can also try to ensure that the ministry fixes this matter, very important, so that our children cannot be disenfranchised, and so that they can continue to enjoy the free secondary education. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Kitonga Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, this is a timely petition, and it does raise several issues. The first issue is on issuance of birth certificates to our pupils. We know very well this is a problem countrywide, and that we need to continue decentralizing into every sub-county so that birth certificates are issued. From there, we move to NEMIS, which is the registration of students, so that they are able to get capitation. Again, there should be no issues with this. From there, we move to the government issuing the actual money to the schools in accordance with the number of students in the NEMIS. Again, here, there should be no hindrance. If we do this, then our education system will be seamless, it will flow well, and we will not be having such petitions which now tell us to go back to the year 2018, 2019, so that we can pay arrears. I urge the Public Petition Committee to move this speed and resolve this issue. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support
Leader,
this petition.
This teacher is raising several things. The most important one, apart from the arrears, is that children cannot be captured by NEMIS without birth certificates. And that may not be resolved by the Petitions Committee. So you have to give direction on that.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and is indeed one of the issues I had noted to ask the Public Petitions Committee to also involve in their deliberations on this issue, to involve the Office of the Registrar of Persons. Two, Honorable Speaker, it is quite clear at every turn of the year, government should know how many students are actually in classrooms from class 1, grade 1, all the way to Form 4. Therefore, there should be no reason, Honorable Speaker, why even at the turn of the year in January, someone should claim what Mr. Indimuli says here, that in January, because the data that was used was from November, December, there are more students admitted into secondary schools. Because those children are never admitted from the blues. It is children who sat KCPE in the previous year, and government knows how many students actually sat for KCPE, for instance, in this financial year, and therefore they should be able to plan for them. Honorable Speaker, also to note that Parliament also has a role to play. The Chairman of Education, I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, you give him a chance, will tell you that there is always a financing gap of about 22 billion shillings in secondary school education funding. And therefore, that occasions the deficits that come in, and the Committee for Budget and Appropriation must therefore ensure that we appropriate adequate resources towards not just day secondary schools, but even for our boarding schools. Two, Honorable Speaker, there are also cases of fraud, and members will tell you across all our constituencies, there are teachers who also escalate the actual number of students they have in NEMIS vis-a-vis the students who are in classrooms, causing a great disservice to others who are not captured in NEMIS. But the ministry should leverage on ICT. And I like what the member for Dagoretti South has said. There is no reason today, in this day and age, when we can be able to capture all these students right from grade 1 to Form 4 and leverage on ICT to ensure that every student has funds attached to that student, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I heard the Leader of Minority in his contribution propose that maybe government should say they are unable to pay and allow head teachers to increase fees. Honorable Speaker, we must never allow, under these strenuous economic times, any head teacher anywhere to increase fees. The government of Kenya should be able to pay school fees for all our children. And therefore, I want to advise my good friend, the Honorable Pio and I, because I have seen them claim that school fees is going up, the cost of fuel is going up. You cannot also be saying here that we allow school fees to go up. School fees must not go up at all, Honorable Speaker. We have also bursaries. And it's the same person yesterday who raised the issue of bursaries. We must also ensure, Honorable Speaker, the multiplicity of bursary funds in this country is an issue, whether we like it or not, at one point or the other, we must be able to look into. MPs, or rather NGCDF, has a bursary kitty. The Ministry of Education has a bursary kitty. The county governments, against the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, now have a bursary kitty for secondary schools. This multiplicity of these bursaries, Honorable Speaker, if we do not confront it today and in the near future, will become a big problem to us. Probably it is that money that is being taken to bursaries that we should be redirecting to capitation of secondary schools. If all our secondary school public schools, all our students in public schools in secondary were catered for fully, including those who are boarders in schools, we may never need to give bursaries to anybody. And that is part of the data, Honorable Speaker. I'm saying the ministry should also, and I hope the Public Petitions Committee will also be able to interrogate the ministry to ascertain what is the actual cost of maintaining a child in a day secondary school, what is the actual cost to maintain a child in a boarding school, whether it's an extra county, a county school, a national school, and how possible is it if we are to pull all the resources we have in the county governments, in NGCDF, in the Ministry of Education for bursaries, to secondary school capitation, then we may never need to give people this handout business of bursaries. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support, and I hope the Public Petitions Committee will be able to look into all these issues. And I do hope the chair of the Education Committee could also speak to the issues of the actual budgetary deficits that exist, that occasion some of these deficits in financing. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Robert Mbui, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, the issue of capitation has been first, it is always delayed, and secondly, Mr. Speaker, it is also always never enough. Mr. Speaker, on the matter that has been raised here by the petitioners of the government knowing the number of children, let us be honest to ourselves, Mr. Speaker. The government knows the number of children in every school because every classroom teacher must every single day, morning and afternoon, sign a class register confirming the number of children in that school. So it's not rocket science. Every principal knows the number of children. Mr. Speaker, the problem we face is when we are told that the children must have birth certificates to be put in the NEMI system. And Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, it is also the government that is in control of the delivery and the production of birth certificates. So parents are unable unless they go and queue for long hours to get birth certificates. So a lot of children don't have birth certificates and they end up not being able to be put in the system. But Mr. Speaker, even when you look at the amount of money that is given, you know, there was a time we were supporting education exams. Mr. Speaker, if you get to know the figure that is given for exams, if you get to know the amount of money that is given for sports, it is so little, Mr. Speaker, that it cannot be able to run the education system. So we need to look at how do we increase the capitation to make it enough for our children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Last on this, Melly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of the House that the funding gap that exists is a result of the decision of this House. That the 630 billion shillings, the primary school education is not, secondary school education is allocated around 60 billion. Of that, 22, and in that particular funding, it's supposed to have around 80-something billion shillings. So every year we have a funding gap of 22 billion. And I want to ask this House that in the next funding cycle, let us make sure that that amount of money is actually put in the budget. Two, Honorable Speaker, I also want to point out that in the various fundings that we have in this country, and I want to say the majority leader has just put it very clear. The other day we discussed with some experts that there is a lot of money outside there with the local banks, in the NGCDF, county governments, and other institutions amounting to over 30 billion shillings. If well streamed out, it can actually do a good job in terms of funding education. Two, we have this issue of a birth certificate. And I just want to address this more specifically to the Ministry of Interior. It has become a serious problem in schools to have a birth certificate. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Interior needs to work together so that we digitize and to get to know how many students, and every student needs to have a number so that we avoid fraud. And as Honorable KJ has just said, we really need to make sure that we have a very clear digital system in schools so that we can fund every child. We have a register in schools. So the petitions committee, and I think the education committee will have an input into this so that we solve this issue, and this one should not give parents and principals an excuse to raise fees. This is hard economic times, and actually we need to lessen the burden that we are giving to the parents of this country, that let the government pay, let the principals not raise fees at this particular time, Honorable Speaker. We need to streamline and make sure that the monies that we have reach schools on time. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, we have this issue of the budget cycle. The budget cycle and the school calendar starts at different times. This is something that we need to align. We need to sit down so that we align the budget cycle and the school calendar so that disbursements are actually in tandem with what is going on. I thank you and I support.
Thank you. The petition is committed to the Public Petitions Committee. And should they find any requirement to consult with the Committee on Interior and Education, they feel free to do so. Roeda Obo, present your petition.
I, the undersigned, on behalf of residents of Lamu East constituency, draw the attention of the House to the following. 1, that Boni Lungi is an area of land between Dodori and Boni National Reserve in Lamu East constituency, measuring approximately 39,925.7 hectares and inhabited by over 480 households of Aware community. That Article 56 of Constitution obliges the government to put in place affirmative action program for minorities and marginalized groups. Further, the national land policy calls for the protection of land rights from unjust and illegal dispensation of both vulnerable and minority communities. That Gazette number 1447 of 2016, published on 4th March 2016, the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Natural Resource and Regional Development Authority declared Boni Lungi as a state forest. That the gazettement was done without consulting the people and the leader of the affected region, contrary to the Article 10(2)(a) of the Constitution that provide for the public participation in making, implementation public policies and in applying the laws. Further, the gazettement was in breach of the provision of Article 69(1)(d) that required the state to encourage public participation in environmental management. That the land in question is actually community land, that the local people have been farming, depending on resources for collecting natural fruits, honey, plants for traditional medicine and building materials. That being one of the most marginalized indigenous culture in the country, the gazettement further threatened the aware community with losing their land, their livelihood, their way of life, and perhaps their very lives. That the suitable effort to solve the issue and attain a workable solution to this concern have been fertile. And that the matter presented in this petition is not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioner pray that the National Assembly, through the Public Petition Committee, 1, investigate the matter and compel the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to degazette Bonilungi as a state forest. 2, recommend that the Cabinet Secretary for Land, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, in consultation with the county government of Lamu, to facilitate the registration of Bonilungi as community land pursuant to the Article 63(5) of the Constitution and other applicable laws, and make any order and or direction that it deems fit in the circumstance of the matter. And your petitioner will ever pray. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Rueda. Your petition is committed to the Public Petitions Committee to report back in the usual within 60 days to the House and to you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Order number 5, Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 6th December 2023, afternoon sitting. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statement in respect of the following projects for the year ended 30th June 2023 and the certificates therein. Global Fund to contribute to achieving Vision 2030 through universal access to comprehensive HIV prevention, treatment and care program, Ministry of Health. Promotion of youth employment and vocational training in Kenya, State Department for Technical Vocational Education and Training. Number 3, Nairobi Outer Ring Road Improvement Project, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. 4, Capacity Development Project for Enhancement of Rice Production in Irrigation Scheme in Kenya, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, State Department of Crop Development. 5, Southern Sudan Link Road Project, Kenya National Highway Authority. 6, National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project, State Department for Crop Development. Number 7, Emergency Locust Response Project, EDA, credit number 6648 and number 7530 KE, State Department for Crop Development. Number 8, Kenya Primary Education Inquiry in Learning Teacher Service Commission. Number 9, support to the State Department for Technical Vocational Education and Training for Relevant Skills Development Projects, State Department for Technical Vocational Education and Training. Number 10, Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project, State Department for Basic Education. Number 11, support to the Technical and Vocational Education, Training and Entrepreneurship, TVET projects, the State Department for Technical Vocational Education and Training. Number 12, establishment of Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology Project. Number 4, State Department for Higher Education and Research. Number 13, East African Skills Transformation and Regional Integration Project, Kisumu National Polytechnic. 14, Lake Victoria Environment Management Project, Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Number 15, Kenya Social and Economic Inclusive Project, State Department for Social Protection and Senior Citizens Affairs. 16, Kenya Youth Empowerment Opportunities Projects, the State Department for Labor and Skills Development. 17, Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project, Micro and Small Enterprise Authority. And 18, Eastern and Southern Higher Education Center of Excellence, State Department for Higher Education and Research. Mr. Speaker, I lay. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Naomi Wako. Majority Leader, when you lay papers on the table for purposes of Hansard, you read exactly as it's written. I can see you are skipping. If you read out, like say number 9, Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project, you must read also credit number 61380 KE, then you go on. So from what you have read, we are going to have gaps in the Hansard. So you better follow up with the clerks to correct in future. Avoid those in njia ya mkato. Next. Next order. Oh, sorry, Chair PSC. Chair PIC on Commercial Affairs and Energy. Who is the Chair PIC on Posing?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 6th December 2023. The first report of the Public Investment Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy on examination of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of selected state corporations. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next, Chairperson, Public Investments Committee on Governance and Education.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 6th December 2023. Third report of the Public Investments Committee on Governance and Education on its consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of state corporations, Central Region for the financial year 2018-2019, 2019-2020, and 2020-2021. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Chairperson, PIC on Commercial Affairs and Energy.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That this House adopts the report of the Public Investment Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy on its examination of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of selected state corporations laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 6 December 2023. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. PIC on governance and education.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Public Investments Committee on Governance and Education on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of state corporations, Central Region for the financial year 2018-2019, 2019-2020, and 2020-2021, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 6th December 2023. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Kapchai.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of motion I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that Article 57 of the Constitution provides that the state shall take measures to secure the rights of older persons to live in dignity and receive reasonable care and assistance from the state, noting that to actualize the provisions of Article 57 of the Constitution, the government rolled out the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program in 2015 to provide regular and predictable cash transfers to older persons aged 70 years and above, and who are not in receipt of any civil service pension. Appreciating the success that the program has recorded in alleviating poverty and suffering among the older persons of the society since its inception, noting that the government intends to progressively net more vulnerable and underprivileged members of the society with a view of reaching 2.5 million beneficiaries in the next 3 years. Also concerned that with respect to eligibility to the program for older members of society, the guideline requires them to have attained the age of 70 years, noting that Article 260 of the Constitution defines an older member of society as one who has attained the age of 60 years. Concerned that capping the eligibility for enrollment to the Inua Jamii program at the age of 70 years is discriminatory to the older members of society and negates the spirit of the Constitution entitling support to older members of the society. Now, therefore, this House urges the national government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, to revise the age requirement for eligibility of elderly members to be enrolled to the Inua Jamii program from 70 years to 60 years in the line with the Constitution. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
At order number 7, let's first take the statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Housing, Urban Planning and Public Works. Is Omar Mwinyi here? Johanna Ngeno. Is Omar Mwinyi here? Yes, go ahead. Give to Ngeno the mic. You've given one behind him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How long is your statement?
Pardon, sir?
How long is your statement?
Just a few minutes.
Pardon?
3 minutes.
Okay.
3 and 2 minutes is enough. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to the provision of Standing Order number 44-2C, the Honorable Omar Mwinyi, MP, requested for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Housing, Urban Planning and Public Works regarding the management of houses and treatment of tenants on estates in Mombasa County owned by the NHC, National Housing Corporation, on 25th October 2023. The committee wrote to the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Lands and Housing, via a letter reference number NADDC HUP 2023-031 dated 27 October 2023. Mr. Speaker, inviting them, we wrote this letter inviting them to submit the response on the matter raised by the statement. And the response, Mr. Speaker, was forwarded to the committee by the Cabinet Secretary on 27th November 2023, of which I beg to submit. Mr. Speaker, among the issues which Mheshimiwa Omar raised, Mr. Speaker, are fairly answered by the Cabinet Secretary. Number one, which was the essential amenities and facilities that developers of affordable housing and building on spaces or spaces must provide to tenants. Mr. Speaker, the CS replied to that it is a responsibility of NHC, responsibility of the State Department to ensure that all the houses which are occupied by tenants have all the amenities and all the facilities that are meant to be accorded to the tenants. Mr. Speaker, on question number 2, which was actually taken, was the steps taken by the government to ensure that all wastewater and efficient and affluent from a sewerage system in estate in Mombasa owned by the National Housing Corporation in Changamwe constituency are addressed. Mr. Speaker, the CS also answered to that question, which of course enumerated all the cooperation between the State Department and the NHC and the MOWASCO, which is Mombasa Water Sewerage and Sewerage Company, which they are in cooperation in ensuring that all these amenities and facilities are provided for in those particular housing projects. Question number 3, Mr. Speaker, which was seeking clarification on whether the NHC, the NEMA, has developed regulations on management of toxic and hazardous sewerage flow from the broken system and how they are implemented. Mr. Speaker, the CS also replied to those questions, and I believe the answers are fairly clear, and the member, unless, Mr. Speaker, there are so many other issues which the member might raise, I think the answer there, Mr. Speaker, is fairly clear. On question number 4, Mr. Speaker, which I also felt needed some serious and deep investigation into that matter, is the matter which the member raised on the issue or actions which may have been taken against NHC for poor management of the estate, the constant harassment of residents living in the area or in the estate, including threats of eviction, sexual harassment, corruption allegations, rental arrears, disputes and hazardous or harmonization, access to purchase houses, ongoing projects without approval, theft and injuries, security lights, social amenities, and lack of public participation. Mr. Speaker, I've read the response by the CS, and one of the responses, Mr. Speaker, was that there is no action preferred against the NHC by anybody, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, if there was any issue and any formal complaint by anybody through either criminal or any other matter, Mr. Speaker, I think the NHC should have responded or would have responded. But on the issue, Mr. Speaker, since my committee actually visited the housing project in Changamwe, Mr. Speaker, on 24th of June 2023, and we took time, Mr. Speaker, to listen to the Member of Parliament, representing Jakamwe, and also members of the public who are living, or tenants who are living in those particular houses, Mr. Speaker. And there were so many issues which were raised. And in conclusion, I am in agreement that there are some issues that needs further investigation so that we can understand, especially the issue of tenants who have been living in those particular houses, Mr. Speaker. And some of the original tenants, some of them might have passed on, leaving their children behind, and these children maybe are not employed and they cannot pay or continuously pay for these particular services or pay for the rents on those particular houses, Mr. Speaker. And I thought maybe we need to have a further discussion on this so that we can ensure that those people are not unfairly evicted from those particular homes. Mr. Speaker, I think I'll end there, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the answer to some of the issues which were raised by the member is what the State Department is trying to do, Mr. Speaker, building houses, affordable housing, and doing what we call tenant purchase programs, which instead of actually renting a house, Mr. Speaker, and on retirement you leave the house to the owners, Mr. Speaker, the program of tenant purchase means that you pay rent, but towards purchase of that particular house, so that when you retire or when you die, whichever comes first, Mr. Speaker, the house remains as a property of your children. So I think that is a program which the Ministry or State Department is working on to ensure that it is not just about renting those houses and when you retire, you leave nothing to your siblings. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Madam Mwinyi, satisfied?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Chairman Ngeno is a good friend of mine. We've been together in this house for the last 3 terms, and I respect him as my colleague. However, the issue of national housing, Mr. Speaker, in Changamwe is more than what the chair has actually alluded to. The last time they visited, which is just about 4 months ago, in the presence of the CS, Mr. Speaker, and the whole committee, they saw for themselves. New houses have been constructed, 5 stories, Mr. Speaker, yet there is no provision for water for these new units. People have to come down to the ground floor to fetch water and take them manually up to the 5th floor. They saw for themselves, Mr. Speaker, that the sewage was wanting. They also heard and verified that National Housing Corporation is not cooperating with its tenants. It is behaving in a rogue manner, Mr. Chairman. I have videos here, Mr. Speaker, of the National Housing Corporation passing bulldozers in between houses while constructing their new units without even involving the tenants themselves. So this is very inhuman. This is exactly what is happening in Palestine, Mr. Speaker. They are claiming that they are involving the Changamwe people wherever they want to do anything. It is actually false, Mr. Speaker.
Ask for clarification on the statement.
I would actually ask the chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Through the speaker.
Through the speaker.
Yeah.
Is it true that National Housing Corporation has no proper roads? Is it true it has no proper lighting? Is it true it has no wall fence to keep off robbers and burglars? Is it true that it lacks water as a facility? Mr. Speaker, I would also like to ask the chairman, as he was present while you were having this meeting, is it true that National Housing was even trying to grab school land belonging to Magongo Primary and Gome Primary. And through my intervention, Mr. Speaker, we managed to bring back those pieces of land, yet they call it political interference. Mr. Speaker, they should know our work is to represent our people. And by representing our people, it does not mean we are interfering. We are actually doing our work.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, I would actually wish that you direct the committee to conduct a proper investigation, Mr. Speaker, because once we had a board which visited, a full board, chaired by the former Ndia constituency MP, and they brought up 2 lists of debts.
Omar Mwinyi, you are debating your issue with... Give him the mic.
And that is why they have elected me 3 times, because I do represent them. So I want them to be investigated because they have no capacity to collect rent. And furthermore, Mr. Speaker, it is not their duty to collect rent. They are supposed to build and sell those properties so that they develop more for people to occupy, Mr. Speaker. They are actually forgetting even their roles. Mr. Speaker, I think I would go on and on, but then we have a schedule in this House. I want to rest my case there and to seek your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, for this committee to conduct a thorough investigation and bring a full report to this House. I know 3 managing directors who were actually fired because of mismanagement of funds. And this is because of rent collection. Mr. Speaker, I rest my case.
Johanna Ngeno, you've heard, you've heard what the member is saying. What he's saying is that he's not happy with your statement.
Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, statements are statements, and they are normally sent to the ministry for answers. And whichever answer they give you, Mr. Speaker, you may not have the opportunity to subject to thorough or further questioning. Just like the questions, question time, Mr. Speaker, is a little bit better because you have that interaction with the CS one-on-one. And I'm in total agreement with the member, Mr. Speaker, because I think we need to have a thorough investigation into this matter. And it is through your indulgence,
what
Mr. Speaker.
What you do, Honorable Ngeno, you seem to agree that your statement is inadequate. Liaise with the member.
Correct.
And if possible, you can call the concerned minister to your committee, invite the member, and interrogate the matter further.
Correct, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I'll give some direction as follows. Under order number 7, I had given an opportunity to Honorable Bashir Sheikh Abdullahi and Honorable Alice Nganga to make 15-minute statements on the proposed amendments to the Constitution. I'll do that after putting the question at order number 8, taking the Minister for Roads on the question by Robert Mbui, which is all encompassing, and thereafter Alice Nganga and Sheikh, you should be available for your statements. So let's go to call out order number 8, clerk.
Order number 8.
Hold on, clerk. Yes, Women Rep Kericho, what's the problem?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I remember last week I came with a statement, and you directed that today I get the report. So I've just sat here.
This was after the drowning.
Yes.
The 2 people, Kenyans who drowned.
Yes. And Honorable Speaker, as I wait for the report, I'm happy to report that one of the victims were retrieved and the funeral was done yesterday, but the other one is still missing.
Still missing.
And people are waiting. I was there on Sunday. People are really waiting and they are suffering a lot, Honorable Speaker.
You will indulge the chair. Deputy Speaker, tomorrow morning, if you are the one starting the House, let the member who is the chair of the committee concerned issue the statement tomorrow morning. Order, honorable members. Owen Bayer, take your seat. Honorable members on their feet, take your seats. Call out order number 8.
Order number 8, report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Gambling Control Bill, National Assembly Bill number 70 of 2023. Question to be put and third reading.
Order. Order, honorable member on your feet, take your seat. Honorable member, at order number 8, I propose the question, which is that the Gambling Control Bill, National Assembly Bill number 70 of 2023, be now read a third time. Okay, I'll now put the question, and I confirm that we have enough numbers to vote on the question. I put the question, which is that the Gambling Control Bill, National Assembly Bill number 70 of 2023, be now read a third time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the regulation of betting, casinos, and other forms of gambling, authorization of prize competitions and public lotteries, for the establishment of the Gambling Regulatory Authority of Kenya, for the imposition of tax on betting and other forms of gambling, and for connected purposes.
Clerk, and we'll go back to order number 7.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable members, you remember we directed that the Minister for Roads comes to the House today to answer a question framed by the member for Kadhiani, Robert Mbui. If the minister is around the House, he's already in the chamber. CS, welcome to the House. I'll now invite the member for Kadhiani to ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to raise a question by private notice number 19 of 2023 to the CS in charge of Ministry of Roads and Transport. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I want the CS to clarify on the criteria utilized for allocating funds to the improvement of roads and construction of drainage structures through the Road Maintenance Levy Fund and Development Vote as outlined in the tender notice published by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority on 29 September 2023. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would like the CS to explain the reasons, including the factors influencing the discrepancies in the allocation of funds in road improvement projects. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, noting that there was hefty allocations in some counties and omissions of certain other counties. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, I would like the CS to outline the immediate steps that his ministry is taking to ensure the equitable and fair allocation of funds for the improvement of roads and construction of drainage structures, considering the current weather circumstances experienced across the country, which are contributing to the deterioration of roads in various regions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. CS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is my privilege to appear at the plenary of the National Assembly this afternoon in compliance with the letter from the clerk that was dated 28th of November 2023. The aforementioned invitation required me to respond to the question of private notice number 19 of 2023, and also extended leave to provide policy positions as appropriate. In the section immediately below, I have therefore responded to the question.
Minister, I want us to deal with this question because of the heavy calendar I have in the next 45 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That will include a myriad of supplementaries.
Thank you.
And joyriding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to respond as follows. In part 1, maintenance of public roads is funded by the Road Maintenance Levy Fund, commonly known as fuel levy. The allocation of funds collected from the fuel levy is implemented in accordance with the legislation enacted by this august House. In particular, the Kenya Roads Act 1999, Section 6(2) D and E stipulates percentage allocation out of the funds as follows. 22% is allocated equally to all constituencies in the country to be administered by the Rural Roads Authority. 10% of the allocated funds is allocated for the maintenance or development of link roads between constituencies and serve as a government counterpart funds in funding work on rural roads to be administered by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, and that the said percentum shall be equally distributed to the constituencies where Kenya Rural Road Authority has a mandate. 40% of the allocated funds is allocated in respect of national roads to be administered by National Roads Highway Authority. 15% of the allocated funds is allocated in respect of the urban roads to be administered by Urban Roads Authority. 1% of the allocated funds is allocated in respect of roads in national parks and reserves to be administered by the Kenya Wildlife Service. A maximum of 2% of the allocated fund is allocated in respect of the recurring expenditure of the board, and administration of the balance of 10% is in accordance with the road sector investment program approved by the Ministry of Roads. With reference to KERA, which was the subject of the question, members will note that the allocation of 32% of fuel levy, which is earmarked for rural roads, is distributed, and Mr. Speaker, with emphasis, is distributed equally to the concerned constituencies. The 10% of the fuel levy funds mentioned under Section 6 of the Kenya Roads Act is allocated to address, among others, emergencies and security roads. The Constituency Roads Committee, which have appointees of the national government CDF and the patronage of the honorable members, are valuable instruments in ensuring equity and optimal use of fuel levy at the constituency level. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the roads maintenance levy is distributed equally. It therefore means that every honorable member here is superintending and oversighting in this financial year, Mr. Speaker, an amount herein provided which is of the 22% in each and every of the 290 constituencies. We have 44,522,070. In the 10%, Mr. Speaker, you have 20,237,305. As a matter of fact, and for the record of this House, this financial year, every constituency in the Republic of Kenya, without any discrimination, receives 64 million shillings, 759,375. Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to development vote. Turning to the development vote, Mr. Speaker, budgetary allocation to various projects are processed through the annual budgetary cycle culminating in appropriation by the National Assembly. This budget preparation cycle includes detailed scrutiny by the Appropriation Committee of the National Assembly. It is notable that appropriations under the development vote are project specific, and once approved by Parliament, the ministry stands guided and instructed to implement the same. The initial budget allocation proposal for the development vote are generated by agencies of the ministry, taking into account the following parameters. Top priority is given to completion of ongoing projects which is also a requirement under the Public Finance Management Act. Availability of fiscal space for new projects, government policies and strategic directions concerning infrastructure development taken together with technical and economic feasibility, equity and regional balance. Mr. Speaker, therefore, there is another category, Mr. Speaker, there is another category, and I wish honorable members can help me appreciate this point, Mr. Speaker, because it's the cause of so many of the questions that either come to my office privately or as generated by members of parliament in this chamber or are as addressed by members of parliament in public square. There is another category of projects which come about as a result of constitutional imperatives and public participation as guided by parliament. Mr. Speaker, projects arising from public participation process are implemented by CARA largely without modification to the priorities selected and approved by parliament. Through this distinguished house, I hope to make it clear to the public that such projects are entirely consistent with fairness and due process and should not be ascribed to any deficit of equitable allocation of projects by CARA. Mr. Speaker, turning to the tender notice published by Kenya Rural Roads Authority. And Mr. Speaker, I will be coming back to this issue of public participation funds that are appropriated every year by Parliament, including how much was appropriated this financial year and how this has become a matter of immense contention, despite the fact that it's the honorable members of this chamber who approve these resources. Mr. Speaker, turning to the tender published by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority on 29 September 2023, serious misunderstanding and misinterpretation of the notice appeared in various fora. I am grateful for this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to set the record straight for this distinguished House. Allow me to mention 5 key points, Mr. Speaker, at which the public were misled when the tender notice by CARA was taken in isolation as evidence of iniquity. First, Mr. Speaker, the tender contained projects that are based on termination and retendering. CARA, in implementing various development vote projects, has encountered a number of non-performing contractors. After repeated efforts to revive the affected projects failed, it was found necessary to terminate the projects. Permission has been obtained from the Attorney General to wind up the projects and conduct fresh tendering to enable continuation of the projects. For avoidance of doubt, there are other similar terminated projects for which replacement contractors will be sought through open tenders even in the future. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, is the inclusion of public participation projects. Public participation projects are identified, Mr. Speaker, and approved by Parliament before being handed over to CARA for implementation, at which point the tenders are advertised. Extraction of public participation projects from the procurement notice without background and origin being made clear, and use of the same comparisons, which projects funded by other sources, leads to invalid conclusions. The projects are distributed across the country in line with the principle of public participation and other constitutional imperatives considered and determined by this House. The question, therefore, as to whether it is just, fair, or equitable is not better answered by the Cabinet Secretary. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it is better answered by this House. And Honorable Mbui, being a distinguished leader in this House for 2 terms, has a better answer than Cabinet Secretary or any other person, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in fact, Mr. Speaker, since the budget is itemized to specific roads, Mr. Speaker, the ministry or its agencies cannot for sure establish where the roads are located. Mr. Speaker, for the last 5 years, the fund distributed by this House through these mechanisms is in the knowledge of this House. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say for this financial year, this very chamber, this very House, Mr. Speaker, budgeted a sum total of 21 billion shillings, which is far higher than the money allocated to KERA under road maintenance levy through the RMLF. So if the distribution of these resources, Mr. Speaker, to various agencies as budgeted is unfair, then neither KERA nor the ministry will be blamed, because we are constitutionally bound to implement the decisions of this House without injecting a scintilla of doubt, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the third indicator of the projects that were advertised is where we have cases of emergency, like the situation with El Nino. The ministry allocated resources either from the emergency fund or other sources to address these emergencies. The emergencies arise as works are tendered by any road agency for purpose of repair. Those activities are specific to network reinstatement, to the geographical location in question, and generalized comparisons with other counties, for example, are not valid. Such projects also include security roads aimed at improving security operations. Where we have cases of emergency, like in the case of El Nino, the ministry will allocate resources either from the contingency fund or from other sources, including those budgeted by this House. Such allocation shall not be misconstrued to mean unfair allocation of resources, because they will be addressing, Mr. Speaker, what in law is called force majeure, or otherwise known as the act of God. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, is the aggregated funding towards constituency roads identified by Constituent Roads Committee. Mr. Speaker, a number, and this is important also for emphasis, Mr. Speaker, a number of the Constituency Roads Committee have gained experience, have found that it is best to combine various approved budgetary allocation into one bigger project, which is tendered as one package. Mr. Speaker, the consequence of this approach was that the size of the project tends to exceed the regional threshold of 10 million, which necessitates KERA to conduct the procurement at a national level. It can be seen that if these aggregated initiatives are extracted in isolation from the procurement notice and used in general comparison with CRCs, which have not adopted the same approach, errors would result, Mr. Speaker. The notorious constituencies for which type of costs are those that are in urban and peri-urban areas, such as Kikuyu constituency, where the majority leader, Mr. Speaker, comes from. When the adverts appear nationally, people tend to question why are these areas having been considered with big projects, when in reality they have aggregated their resources to one project, Mr. Speaker, and like many other constituencies, especially in rural areas, which receive equal amounts to the same constituencies, but choose to allocate them to projects of less than 10 million shillings, and therefore advertised at the regional level. So, Mr. Speaker, some of the members of parliament here guiding their constituency roads committee decide that instead of funding roads of less than 10 million shillings, they aggregate their money to 20, to 30, to 40, and decide that it be advertised at the national level by KERA because of the constitutional and legal imperatives for advertisement. As a result, you will find, for example, Kikuyu constituency, in the advert that was shared by Honorable Mbui, they are there advertising a project, but the other constituencies across the country where they advertise their roads below 10 million cannot appear in the advert because they will appear in the regional advert where these advertisements occur. And again, Mr. Speaker, taking it in isolation would appear as though one constituency is getting more than the other, yet it is just about how those resources are being utilized by the constituency. Mr. Speaker, it is, Mr. Speaker, 50 is misinterpretation of project cost as an annual budget. And this is where, again, the question of Honorable Mbui, Mr. Speaker, is extremely important. Part of the misinformation associated with KERA notice number of 29th September 2023, Mr. Speaker, is insinuation that the multi-year global cost estimate for various projects was in fact a budget allocation. for a single year, and thus an indication of a skewed allocation of scarce resources. While this incorrect interpretation is easily detected and corrected through cross-reference to approved budgets by this House and approved annual road work plans, I take this opportunity to once again assure the House that the allegations of skewed resource allocation was utterly without basis. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I have been baffled by the utterances by both inside and outside these chambers by elected representatives of the people who have been given enormous mandate and responsibility to do this sacred duty of distributing the public resources, Mr. Speaker, to turn around the whole world, either feign ignorance, Mr. Speaker, on the public,
Order.
or, Mr. Speaker,
Order, honorable members.
or Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Robert Mbui, what is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
He's answering your question, remember?
Mr. Speaker, I do agree, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know that this is a question that I raised in the House Business Committee that you chair. And we agreed as a House that instead of talking about it, even in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, because I'd wanted to seek for your permission to do an adjournment motion, we agreed that we ask the CS so that he can come and clarify. Mr. Speaker, is the CS in order to lecture members of parliament? And I want to say what he has said, that he is baffled by utterances, both inside and outside these chambers, Mr. Speaker, by elected representatives of the people who have been given a mandate to turn around the whole world and either feign ignorance or deliberately mislead the public. Mr. Speaker, is the CS allowed to say such words in this House? Mr. Speaker, the CS has to withdraw that statement and apologize to this House.
He is answering your question. Let him finish. You will interrogate him.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister, order. Order, honorable members. I have brought the minister for you to grill him on whatever you want. That grilling and questioning excludes shouting at the minister. So listen to him. When he finishes, everybody will have an opportunity to ask questions which I shall compel him to answer. But let's have some decorum in the House. Minister, try and paraphrase your answers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The reason why, Mr. Speaker, I have to go this length to answer in detail is, Mr. Speaker, there is a misconstrued position in the public that certain constituencies or certain counties or certain communities are getting projects more than the others. Mr. Speaker, I have overemphasized that should there be unfair distribution of these resources, Mr. Speaker, the problem squarely lies in the House that allocates the resources. Mr. Speaker, I will be willing, Mr. Speaker, I will be willing to be educated where else budget takes place in the Republic of Kenya. The only supreme august house in the Republic of Kenya which allocates resources and not, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, Minister, take your seat. Honorable members, let's take the answer. Minister, try and paraphrase. Yes. You have made your policy statement. Avoid the temptation to appear as if you are lecturing members. Order. I need no assistance. I need no assistance from any one of you. Avoid the temptation to appear as if you are lecturing members. Answer the question. Indeed, many of these members keep coming to my chamber to raise the same questions. That's why you've been called here. When he finishes, I'll give you time to ask questions. I had allocated 45 minutes. I'll even allocate more time for you to ask questions and be satisfied with what the minister is doing in your constituencies and elsewhere in the country.
For the assurance of the House, Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling itemized budget by this House past this financial year, clear with indication of the money for every road and for every county and for every constituency. So that, Mr. Speaker, it becomes clear that there is no other entity in this country or in the world that budgets for roads for our country, except this honorable august house. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate, therefore, that these projects were misconstrued as an introduction of new projects. For avoidance of doubt, Mr. Speaker, the replacement of non-performing contractors, I'm just giving a summary of what you say, as you said, Mr. Speaker, that for the avoidance of doubt, the replacement of these non-performing contractors, some of whom have abandoned the site, is continuous, and after termination, the replacement of these contractors will be done through an open tender as provided in an annex that I have here, which is part of the advertisement just after the one Honorable Mbui spoke about. Mr. Speaker, the annex we are provided indicates that the number of projects that were retendered by KERA, anyone looking at the advert also in isolation, Mr. Speaker, would be forgiven to think that it's new projects or it is giving advantage to certain counties as against the other. Mr. Speaker, some of these re-advertised projects were initially tendered in the years 2015, 2016, 2017, and the contractors were unable to deliver to date. It was only in the interest of justice in these counties that the KERA re-advertises them as approved by the Attorney General. Some of the counties in the annexure, Mr. Speaker, include Homa Bay, Kisii, Nandi, Baringo, Kakamega, and Makueni. Mr. Speaker, as indicated earlier, each year Parliament, in its wisdom, allocates resources to various projects across the country, which are later advertised by three road agencies, including KERA. A large portion of these projects is actually implemented by KERA. Therefore, the extraction of the public participation projects without the benefit of background can be easily mislead the public to think some of these projects are being funded afresh, when in reality, Parliament in its wisdom is using the budget process to add resources to address inequality. So as I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, there is no better institution that can understand the origin of these projects than the National Assembly itself. And there are no greater public officers to explain the wisdom behind the allocation than the members of this august house. In summary, therefore, Mr. Speaker, the notice published on 29 September 2023 by KERA was not a budget or an instrument of allocating resources. Instead of KERA waiting until other approved projects across the country were ready to commence procurement, thus delaying those which are ready, KERA moved this batch towards procurement in the expectation that subsequent budgets will follow. As a matter of fact, the notice was followed by subsequent notices, and others will still follow. I believe that by moving with speed on procurement matters at all times, KERA is fulfilling its mandate and meeting the expectation of this House. The final part of the response, Mr. Speaker, is in relation to the question about the factors influencing allocation of funds to projects. It is seen in this response to part 1 above that the initial budget allocation proposal for development vote are generated by agencies of the ministry, taking into account the following, which I repeat for purpose of clarity: completion of the ongoing projects, availability of fiscal space for new projects, government policies and strategic directions concerning infrastructure development taken together with technical and economic feasibility, equity, and regional balance. The initial budget proposal are then subjected to extensive review before eventually being enacted by Parliament on one project per line basis. I submit for consideration of this august House that there are no unexplained discrepancies in allocation of projects funds, that no counties have been omitted. Concerning the published KERA notice of 29 September 2023, where a batch of ready tenders was submitted for procurement, it is seen that subsequent publication of more batches of ready tenders will address the remainder of the projects which are captured in the budget approved by Parliament. Indeed, there would have been a risk that the publication of future batches of tenders in which those tenders were not on 29 September 2023 are of course not mentioned, could have generated another wave of concern of iniquity in the reverse direction, were it not for you, Mr. Speaker, and this House granting me the opportunity to explain this issue during this session. Mr. Speaker, the minister has taken measures to ensure equitable and fair allocation of funds for the improvement of roads and drainage structures.
You have 10 minutes, Minister.
Improvement structures in light of the prevailing weather circumstances. These measures include the ministry's playing an active role as part and parcel of the National Disaster Response Team being coordinator Minister of Interior to ensure that we respond to the El Nino situation. Number two, under the Equalization Fund, Mr. Speaker, this House approves a budget that deals with marginalized areas, and the ministry, through its agencies, implements the same. Minister also, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring prompt, simultaneous, and adequate disbursement of RMLF funds to all constituents to enable the timely tendering and commencement of works. Ministry, through Kenya Roads Board, continues to review applications from county governments on roads that have matured enough to be moved to national level, Mr. Speaker, for reconsideration depending on the resources that are available. Fourth, equal allocation RMLF to carer under 22 and 10% are usually advertised in two ways, which I have explained. If it is less than 10%, 10 million, Mr. Speaker, in the region, and if it's above that, it is advertised at the national level. Fifth, as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, the notice that was in public domain contains only engineers' estimates, and it is not, Mr. Speaker, the actual cost, which will be determined after advertisement and when the tender is awarded, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, utilizing the remaining 7 minutes, let me say this. Mr. Speaker, we are in danger when it comes to the road maintenance levy. And this is where this discussion is coming from. Mr. Speaker, the primary source of this road maintenance levy is levy applied designated to petroleum, which is 18 shillings per liter. A challenge has emerged in recent years in terms of revenue collected under fuel levy. In 2021-2022, it was 87 billion, Mr. Speaker. In 2022-2023, it was 86. In this financial year, Mr. Speaker, it's still 86 billion. In short, the collection of fuel levy has stopped increasing, and in the worst case scenario, may reduce going forward. This situation will not improve if electric mobility picks up quickly as anticipated. While the rate of the fuel levy has remained static for about 7 years, inflation has continued to chip away the purchasing power of the amount collected. It is notable that in 2016, the price of liter for petrol was Kenya shillings 95, while the levy was 18. 7 years later, Mr. Speaker, the price of this petrol is 218, while the fuel levy is still 18 shillings. While the fuel levy collection trend has flattened, the length of the roads, primarily rural roads, which have been upgraded to bitumen standards over the last 10 years, has increased by 4,000 kilometers. These newly upgraded roads need to be maintained. There is a comprehensive and modern approach to road maintenance known as performance-based maintenance. Under this approach, a service provider is engaged competitively to provide maintenance, which is measured in terms of specified output indicators, such as whether surface damage has been repaired promptly, drains are cleared, and the vegetation is always trimmed below a given height. The performance-based approach gives strong incentives to serve providers to do quality work at all times, since it is the most efficient way to avoid repeat jobs and associated costs. In the ideal scenario, a road should be placed under active performance-based maintenance immediately it's constructed and throughout the lifetime until new major upgrade. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the National Highway Authority, whose heavily trafficked roads are well placed to benefit from performance-based maintenance, is currently not able to roll out this approach due to insufficient funds despite getting 40% of the fuel levy. The backlog of the road maintenance for the national highways is actually increasing, meaning that we may start to see potholes on major arteries due to delayed interventions. The Urban Roads Authority is not faring any better. Whereas the mandate of KURA is to maintain roads classified as urban national roads, in practice, KURA has had to intervene massively in cities, major towns, and county headquarters across the country. KURA is suffering from lack of resources to discharge this mandate. However, the most alarming situation, Mr. Speaker, is rural roads. The Rural Roads Authority does not have a robust mechanism to secure funds for any kind of regular maintenance of paved rural roads, let alone performance-based maintenance. The sad truth is that the paved roads under KERA are orphans in financial sense. As a matter of fact, members of Parliament, through the Constituent Roads Committee, are opposed to any attempt, Mr. Speaker, to allocate any money under 22% or 10% on maintenance of tarmac roads, Mr. Speaker. It is therefore true to say, Mr. Speaker, we are waiting a catastrophe. No wonder many Kenyans are complaining of potholes in many rural roads across the country, especially the low-volume seal roads. Mr. Speaker, the implications of the non-availability of funds for maintenance of the rural roads are clear. If a solution is not found for rural roads, the recently paved rural roads will be deteriorate rapidly, and both the minister and indeed the distinguished members will face difficult questions for which we will not have immediate answers from the public. A significant portion of rural roads which are upgraded to be paved roads standard were constructed in expectation that traffic volumes were minimal and relatively low expectation would suffice. In practice, economic activities are promptly picked up as new roads were opened to traffic for specific loading. Overloading has caused distress on several pavements. This makes effective maintenance even more urgent and necessary. It is in this context, Mr. Speaker, that the portion of the report of the National Dialogue Committee, which mentions a reduction of Kenya shillings 5 per litre in fuel levy, should give us a pause of reflection concerning the consequence of the road sector. Going forward, we anticipate the government will be reverting to this distinguished House for assistance and support in relation to securing adequate funds for maintenance of the various classes of national roads. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, in another 3 minutes, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, we have challenges with the development vote. This is only 3 minutes, and I'll conclude. Then I will get the necessary guidance from this House.
You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having outlined the basic principle of fund allocation under the development vote, allow me to go to specific details in regard to the challenges of road financing, which have a bearing on the project implementation and equitable allocation of funds. In summary, Mr. Speaker, it is not true that the Minister of Roads and its agencies are in any way marginalizing any part of our country. Instead, the ministry works hand in hand with this august House to ensure resources are distributed fairly across the country. Mr. Speaker, the State Department of Roads has a significant budget deficit, leading to inadequate allocation of road projects. The implementation of the Road 10,000 program from the year 2013-2014, which took place in the absence of anticipated progressive rise in budget ceilings by the National Treasury, led to a portfolio of projects not being adequately funded. The rollout of Road 10,000 program ended a full circle in 2017-2018, when net government GOK budget stress started being witnessed. In the first and second years of the Road 10,000 program, an average allocation was given to be 20 billion provided. It was expected that this allocation would progress upwards. However, over time, ceiling allocation for roads in state started diminishing into an average of 55 billion from the year 2017-2018. In the 2021-2022 financial year, the State Department of Roads had allocation of 55 billion for contracts against, Mr. Speaker, an outstanding project portfolio of 900 billion shillings as of July 1st, 2022. In order to address the issue of outstanding portfolio vis-a-vis the resource available, the State Department embarked on reduction of portfolio, which currently stands at 700 billion. The reduction entailed dropping some planned but not yet awarded projects. With an average of 55 billion GOK component for contracted works and land compensation, the outstanding portfolio will take a minimum of 15 years to complete, assuming all factors remain constant, including inflation, claims, and interest. The limited allocation vis-a-vis the outstanding project portfolio result in thinly spread allocation for projects. Most of the projects that current government is implementing were awarded prior to 2020-2021 financial year. In order to address the issue of marginalized counties in terms of roadworks, the State Department would have to increase the portfolio of projects to address the disparity. This would, however, mean even thinner spread of allocation and more years to complete any of these projects. Mr. Speaker, the thin spread of GOK funding available means the road projects take longer to complete, become more expensive due to passage of time, and attract interest and more claims. Mr. Speaker, and this is my last and important point, in the current financial year, the government of Kenya allocation from this House for Department of Roads is 76 billion, against the request by the National Treasury of 250 billion. The State Department therefore started the financial year with a budget shortfall of 70%. During the first supplementary budget, the 76 billion was reduced to 61 billion, Mr. Speaker. Out of the allocated 61 billion, the amount for the development of the roads is 46 billion, has been allocated for development. This inadequate budget provision vis-a-vis the huge portfolio of road projects has led to stalling of road projects everywhere in the country. And Mr. Speaker, I need to insist, everywhere in the country, because in one part of the country, they think another part is being considered. And if you go to that part, they think another part has been considered. Mr. Speaker, out of the outstanding GOK portfolio, there is a component of 155 billion pending bills as at 30th of October 2023. The available money to service those pending bills is 46 billion, which is less than 1/3 of the provision required to pay outstanding bills on road projects, in addition to more work that will be certified within the remaining portion of financial year. In association with the large stock of pending bills—
Time up, Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, if I don't make this last point, it will not complete on the development.
How many minutes?
Give me 3,
Three
then
minutes.
I'll finish. I actually have 2 pages, so it may be less than 3. In association with the large stock of pending bills in the requirement to pay interest of the same and resourced by contractors to claims to recover the cost, in this regard, the ministry is considering to propose a new legislation to be brought to this House to cap the potential liabilities from inadequate funded projects in the manner similar to Induplam rule, Mr. Speaker. Because we have now a situation where a road is awarded 1 billion, but the claims are about 3 or 4 billion in the same road because it's been abandoned, and their claims and their interest, Mr. Speaker. Delayed release of budget of GOK Exchequer also impacts the development of roads. It is expected that once the budget has been approved, the Exchequer would optimally be released in tranches as the year progresses. In the current financial year, Mr. Speaker, against the budget of 76 billion under printed estimates, Mr. Speaker, the only releases we have received up to now is 6 billion shillings to serve, Mr. Speaker, pending roads of 155 billion and a budget of 76 billion. Even when you sit in that office and contractors are coming asking for support, Mr. Speaker, you wonder, if you spread 6 billion against a claim of 155 billion, which contractor would you give money to go on site, on which one would you not? If you give a contractor who is claiming 2-3 billion, you give them 100 million, they are unable to mobilize to go on site. And that is the true situation as we have in our country. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I have already touched on the matter of public participation projects while answering the questions above. But, Mr. Speaker, these public participation and other projects that are introduced to satisfy constitutional requirements could be perceived to contribute to skewed net of allocation unless, Mr. Speaker, and it will cause the situation that we have now. If you see members are angry here because they come to my office the way they come to your office, Mr. Speaker, a lot of the questions is the public participation funded roads allocated by this House every year. And, Mr. Speaker, unless there is a proper sensitization and, Mr. Speaker, a full discussion by this chamber in a honest manner about the appropriation of these public participation funds, Mr. Speaker, this feeling of marginalization will continue. Most of these maintenance roads under public participation initiative are implemented by KERA. It is notable that all roads under the development budget are itemized and approved by this House. Once Parliament has appropriated and approved the specific project to be implemented, the road agencies will implement. Mr. Speaker, I have a suggestion that, Mr. Speaker, instead of this House, and I can only suggest because this House is supreme to all of us, instead of this House allocating the 21 billion to either new projects or projects that are below 10 million or maintenance of roads, Mr. Speaker, if this 21 billion was available to support the pending bills, Mr. Speaker, most of our contractors would have come back to site to make sure that those roads are progressing. But this is a suggestion. I have no control as to this House, what this House decides, Mr. Speaker. I am just suggesting to the House that if you can consider Mr. Speaker, supporting the pending bills, it will be great. While the ministry is committed to equity, it is worth noting that some of the factors considered in discussion about inequity, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I conclude by saying this. Not all is gloom, Mr. Speaker. The government has been working extremely hard for the last 1 year to speak to our development partners, both bilateral and multilateral. I speak with experience, Mr. Speaker, because you know, and I have appraised you on this issue. I have had to travel to many different parts of this world, Mr. Speaker, and particularly to one of our bilateral partners' countries to try to request them to consider supporting us. Mr. Speaker, the conversations are in advanced stage. Mr. Speaker, I believe that in another 2 or so months, I should be able to come back to this chamber, if invited again, to give the good news to honorable members that some of our critical number of our roads will resume, Mr. Speaker, thanks to the efforts we are working to make sure that those development partners support us. And Mr. Speaker, with utmost respect, I want to thank those development partners for listening to the Republic of Kenya and for listening to Excellency the President, having been a member of his delegation to many of these countries to deal with this issue. The last issue, Mr. Speaker, is to thank the development partners for helping us deal with the question of Eurobond, because this is where the devil lies. It is the Eurobond payment, Mr. Speaker, that is due of $2 billion that has made it impossible for us to either borrow for infrastructure or, Mr. Speaker, to be able to get other resources allocated, and even for our budget to be constricted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, many members here may feel that I am a bit hard when it comes to the question of these public resources. Mr. Speaker, I have been a victim, Mr. Speaker, of Mr. Speaker, berating, harassment on something, Mr. Speaker, I have zero control. If I had a chance to sit where my colleagues sit, and we have sat with them in this house, Mr. Speaker, I would use this floor to, Mr. Speaker, correct the injustice and the marginalization. Because if you take this punishment to an innocent cabinet secretary who has zero role in allocating of money or budget, Mr. Speaker, it would be unfair in the Republic of Kenya. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, with all my heart. I am the only cabinet secretary, I don't want to praise myself, who has invited as many counties, I'm now in county number 26, to come for an open discussion without considering a political side, to ask ourselves, how shall we deliver on this very difficult road function in the absence of the budget that we have been given? So, Mr. Speaker, even when we feel the pain, and I have spoken to my friends here, when we feel the pain, and the pain of our voters saying we are stuck in mud, the roads are not progressing, this pain is a collective responsibility of leadership at such a time as this. And I promise this house, I will not sleep until we succeed to return all the contractors to go on site. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. This was Robert Mboi's question. The minister, hold on. The CS is no longer on the floor, so there's nothing out of order. The question belongs to Robert Mbui, but the minister has wandered far and wide on the issue. I'll give the first shot to the questioner, Robert Mbui. Then I'll give Minister, you note the questions. I'll give 5. You answer. Those will be joyriders. After the first 5, I'll give another 5. Depending on the interest, I'll see what to do. I'll start with Robert Mbui, the questioner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. CS has just said he will not sleep until all pending roads are completed. I have one in my constituency, and I don't know whether you'll be awake for 3 months, because you said you get money in 3 months. But, Mr. Speaker, from the response of the CS, one of the things I noted is, which I think is something you need to address, is when you say the ministry cannot identify where the roads are located. Correct. It's important that,
Minister,
because I don't know.
You are not allowed to engage the members on the floor.
No, Mr. Speaker, you know he was in the house.
Listen, take notes, and you'll answer the question.
Yeah, but Mr. Speaker, now, when we, on the issues that is answered, one of the issues that comes up, Mr. Speaker, is a 10%, because he spent a lot of time explaining how the money is distributed under the Kenya Roads Board Act. But Mr. Speaker, my question was basically very specific on the tender notice, and I think he handled the tender notice issue properly, in my opinion. But Mr. Speaker, in the allocation of money, there is 10% that is administered in accordance with the road sector project approved by the CS of Transport himself and the CS for Treasury. And this is for emergencies, Mr. Speaker, like El Nino. Currently, we are experiencing El Nino. The hard-hit counties are in northeastern, eastern, and the coast, Mr. Speaker. I would like to understand from the minister whether that 10% has been spent more in that area that I've mentioned, where, Mr. Speaker, you are aware, one of our members from Eastern lost a brother because of floods, and two of our members were marooned a whole night the other day from Tana River, Mr. Speaker. So I want to know whether the 10% is allocated fairly to the areas of El Nino.
Thank
and then,
you.
Mr. Speaker, just to finish, Mr. Speaker, because one of the reasons that he's pointed out as a problem that this was an advertisement by Kera, and it was not exhaustive. Mr. Speaker, why can't Kera allow each constituency or county to advertise for their roads so that we stop seeing one advert and then all of us are convinced that that is a national cake being distributed? Isn't it fairer and possible that every county or every constituency can advertise their roads even when they go beyond 10 million? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Moses Sirma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And for joyriders, only one question.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to confirm that one of the counties who have visited the CS in his office is Baringo County, and I was there. Mr. Speaker, marginalization is real. Marginalization is real. And I want to take advantage of, I want to take this opportunity to talk about my constituency. We have 3 roads which are going, just passing through my constituency. One was done by the colonial government. The second one was done by the Kenyatta government. The other one was just a road which was done by Moi to go to his house. So, in other words, all other governments have never.
Ask him a question.
Can you use we want this issue of marginalization. Could you consider those constituencies which have not gotten a road for a long time to be considered right now appropriately, as they have not been considered in the past government? Can I be a beneficiary of this government? Thank you.
Yes. Rosa Buyu. Rosa Buyu.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that the minister or the CS is actually saying that his office is open to everybody and he sees so many people in other counties. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to ask the CS, is this all the counties in this country, or is it for only the shareholding counties? Because I've tried time and again to get to the minister, and it is impossible. Impossible.
Thank you. Who is the member at the end? Is that a member for Turkana or for? No, the member behind you. I can't see that far. That is Honorable Akucha, is it? Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. My name is Emathe Namwar.
Yes,
the
Namwar.
MP for Turkana Central.
I can't see you very clearly.
Turkana Central is the headquarters of Turkana County.
I know
Thank
you are not Turkana. Ask your question.
Thank you, CS, for coming, and thank you, Speaker. Now, the point I want to put across actually is, they say the arrow is not afraid to shoot from the bow, but it is afraid to reach the target. Why am I saying that? Is because I have heard the minister, and he has actually said that the problem lies in this house. And that is where the rubber meets the tarmac. Why does Turkana, Samburu, and these other counties get zero allocation, and we have other counties like Muranga, like Kiambu? Actually, 15 counties are getting zero allocation, while others are getting a lion's share. That is the point. And he has gone ahead to say the budget or anything that he receives is itemized. The question is, how can the minister prevent such kind of cannibalism and marginalization of some areas getting an allocation of zero? Because I know there are people who are sitting in committees
You have
that's
asked your
responsible with the
question.
past.
Next, honorable member.
And so, Speaker
Likuyani.
Thank you very much,
One
Mr. Speaker.
question
Yeah,
for
just
every
one
journalist.
question. On his submission, the CS alluded that there are certain constituencies, and he mentioned Kikuyu, that consolidates their funds to advertise for a road. I want the CS to tell us the particular road and the amount, because we know what we get on 22%. The particular road that was consolidated and the amounts. Thank you.
Minister, those are 5. You can now answer. Hold your horses. I'll give you the chance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very quick because I can see the interest is high. I want to thank my friend, Honorable Mbui. He has asked me the question of how can a minister not be able to identify specific roads that are funded by the specific counties or constituencies for roads that are funded under this allocation by Parliament using public participation. This is the problem, sorry, Mr. Speaker. This is where the problem lies. When Parliament is allocating that money, they allocate to the road. They don't allocate to a constituency or a county. So during the itemized budget of Parliament, they allocate to specific road. The only time carer now will discover where that road is when they issue the authority to incur expense, expenditure, to the regional manager, or they advertise the road. That is when, during advertisement, the information now comes out that this is in Kakamega, or is in Kisumu, or is Mombasa, or whichever place. So, but during the budget process, when you people complete the budget process, as the budget is completed, you can't tell exactly where this road is, because it's just a name of road X, road Y. But during now advertisement, once the money is released from Treasury, during advertisement, when you realize, okay, this road is in a particular county. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, the 10% allocation by the Ministry and Treasury. First, I want to say, number 1, when I came to office, I found that my predecessor had used the same money to fund projects that are multi-year. So they are the ones that we will still support this year and the next financial year to make sure that they finish those projects. Projects, for example, in Fangano Island and other places, Mr. Speaker, which I know offered. And these projects reduce the amount of money that remains under what you famously call CS allocation. The money for this year for that emergency has not been spent yet, because when it was predicted that El Nino will happen, we sat down as a government and agreed that if you spend this money, what will you do to restore roads affected by El Nino? So you are right, Honorable Mbui. What we are going to do after the El Nino process, we have been predicted that by January or February, we will now do an assessment, and then the the agencies, Kenya and Kura, who control their procurement, will determine which roads are going to be restored. You will help us as members of parliament under the 10% and 22%, which can be done through those ones. And then under this emergency funding, we will cover the difference for the period. Again, for the benefit of the House, this week the Treasury released the contingency fund of 1 billion shillings for us to enable us to deal with the massive destruction of El Nino at the moment. Again, we have told our agencies we will only use this money to restore structures. The usual maintenance that was always done, we use the resources that we have for maintenance. And as I said, Honorable Speaker, if there is a point I need to overemphasize here, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, we are going to have a problem with maintenance money. The orphaned roads of care of 5,000 kilometers. With this rain that is coming, you will find potholes in most of your roads, especially those ones that were low volume seal standard. And you know across the country they are now potholed. Some of them, the contractor has not left the site, he has not finished the road, but behind you, you know there are potholes. Why? Because unlike Kenya that tries and Kura, Kera does not have any other location that is set aside to maintain tarmac roads. And you know, you honorable members, you don't want the 22% and the 30% to be transferred to maintain the tarmac roads. That is where we are in catch-22. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, is why can't Kera allow each county to advertise their roads? It is indeed allowed. It's only that if Parliament amends the law, the public procurement law, to allow that advertisement of more than 10 million outside the county, then very few will come to care. And as a matter of fact, Honorable Mbui, very, very few constituencies, like the one I mentioned, do the consolidation. Because many people are supporting roads of 5 million, 6 million, 7 million. So all the advertisements, actually nearly 95%, happen in the regional level. A few that come to national level when they exceed 10 million is in that regard. And just to answer the Member of Parliament Lukuyani, I can supply that information later because I didn't come with it. But that the information within my knowledge, I know one road in Kikuyu that was about 20-something million that was advertised by Kera because they consolidated their resources. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Musa Sirma has talked about marginalization of his constituency. Well, whereas Eldama Ravine is marginalized, it's not the worst. Lamu East does not have an inch of tarmac. Lamu East does not have an inch of tarmac. Lugari, where I know Lugari, Mr. Speaker. In terms of Lamu East, we have tried this year. We have tried this year to try to cover them to just taste the tarmac. We've given them about, under the emergency fund, the same Honorable Mbui was saying, the president directed that we give them at least 15 kilometers, which we launched 2 months ago. There are other counties that are really marginalized. If you look at the allocation for rural roads, it's Tana River.
If Sirma's constituency is not sufficiently marginalized, go to the next.
Mr. Speaker, however, because Honorable Sirma was in the meeting and I know the roads in Eldama Ravine, in Mogotio constituency, the interlinked up to Rongai, that they have suggested to the government, we are in the process of designing them so that we see how they can be supported, at least if we get a development partner willing to support. And that is the case for so many roads suggested by honorable members in this House. Mr. Speaker, I have had...
Rosa Buyu just made a statement. If you want to give her an appointment, go ahead.
No, Mr. Speaker, Rosa Buyu, I am shocked, Mr. Speaker, that I have been unable to meet her because, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen her missed call.
She didn't say you are unable to meet her. She said you are unable to be reached.
To be reached. That is why I am shocked because, Mr. Speaker, we have a very long history that dates back to 2004. And so, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that I correct this unfortunate mistake, I will give her an appointment as soon as I leave this door, Mr. Speaker, and I will invite her for a conversation. Not just, Mr. Speaker, I know some colleagues from your constituency, county came, but at that time the politics was not so right, so people feared coming to visit me. But Mr. Speaker, Homa Bay did not have a problem. I had a number of leaders from Homa Bay coming to my office. But on a lighter note, I will correct that issue. Mr. Speaker, on the Honorable Emade, I cannot overemphasize the importance, Mr. Speaker, of this House having a conversation with itself on how best to handle this question of public participation resources so that it not only helps us to sort out the pending roads, but Mr. Speaker, can make sure that it corrects any possibilities of marginalization. But I want to hasten, Mr. Speaker, that Turkana, we have done our best as a ministry through with our development partners to provide infrastructure in Turkana County, and we are going to do more in the near future to make sure that those roads are addressed. Mr. Speaker,
Good.
I think
We'll take the second batch.
I thank you.
Wow. Julia Sunguli.
Mr. Speaker, I want to...
Only one question.
Mine will be actually very brief. Mr. Speaker, I'm interested in the Minister's answer with respect to the low volume seal roads. And I don't know, because the Minister has given us very bad news, except the good news at the end that he says the government is working hard. But in reality, what is the plan for maintaining those roads? Because some of them, the contractors abandoned before the 3-year period of maintenance. And I'm referring particularly to the road from Kilgoris to Emurua-Digir and the road from Chebole to Siongiroi, the roads which are terribly dilapidated now. What is the plan, Mr. Minister?
Thank you. Tonkei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the CS has spoken about marginalization. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at Narok, for so many years, Narok has been among the counties that have been marginalized on roads. I want to ask the CS, what is he going to do to address this issue of marginalization? Because, Mr. Speaker, when you talk of other counties being given money for roads, and there are counties that have never seen a tarmac road, what is he going to do to address this issue? Thank you.
Wamboka, one question.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. For the record, I come from Bungoma County, and I want the Minister to be aware that all construction works, roads in Bungoma have stalled. All. Starting from Mateka, Bumula, Mianga, going to Misihu Brigadier, Sirisia, all of them are stalled. How do we feel as taxpayers when our roads have stalled, all of them, for more than 3 years, while Murang'a, every other day, they get new roads? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most of the roads that stalled, Mr. Speaker, are roads which were designed through marginalization. And the roads the minister is trying to solve, Mr. Speaker, are the roads that were constructed
Hillary,
by...
you are not the minister.
Sorry, sir.
Ask a
I
question.
want to ask the question, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
So, Mr. Speaker, I come from...
has the capacity to answer questions.
I come from Kipkelian constituency, Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
and there is a road that is a security road. When there is demonstration and these people of ODM decide to close Awasi, we lose a lot of patients who are supposed to be taken to referral hospital. And we have asked the government of Kenya to construct a security road that will link us to Eldoret without necessarily going through Awasi. And I'm talking about Kericho County, which for the last 5 years didn't get a single tarmac. And if you talk about marginalization, Mr. Speaker, it is the worst marginalized county in the previous regime. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking what the minister is doing to help the situation in Kericho.
Omolher. Omolher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of marginalization, I want to understand the criteria used to allocate these resources, because the cabinet secretary is aware of the challenges, and that's why the other day when he came to Garissa, for example, the roads were inaccessible. That's why you had to fly in. Maybe next year when you come, that issue should not be there. You can drive down, and that has to come from the efforts and the goodwill from your side. But I want to understand why a particular county is able to get 1.8, and when I looked at the allocation for Garissa, it's at 100 million.
1.8 what?
So my concern is, if the need is there, why can't allocations be made as per the needs? Because this creates issues of insecurity. IEDs are planted not in tarmac roads, but roads that are maram and not tarmac. So maybe let's look at this issue holistically to even secure our borders. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Owen Bayer. Minister, those are very short questions. I'll take a few more, and in answering also be precise and concise.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. And Honorable Minister, you know you and I, where we come from, we were same place for school. But I want to ask you this. Well, I appreciate what the answers you have given, but you have been accused by members, some of them may not be in this house, that of being arrogant. In fact, one recently in a radio station said that you are Mr. 10% on a radio broadcast. What do you have to say about such accusations, Honorable Minister?
Yes. Wow. I'll give to Badi Twalib.
Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naitwa Mheshimiwa Bezimba, sio Badi Twalib. Badi Twalib ni wa Jomvu, mimi ni wa Kisauni.
Who? Bezimba.
Bezimba.
Sorry, Bezimba. My good friend.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
You all wear a turban on your head. So.
Badi havai kofia, mimi ndio ninavaa kofia.
Yes.
Basi ni sawa. Swala langu liko kwa waziri ni kwamba Mheshimiwa Rais alikuja Kisauni akafungua barabara rasmi, akaanzisha barabara rasmi ya kutoka Kiembeni, Mwakirunge, Bondora. Lakini baada ya kuondoka matingatinga yote alimfuata. Hakuna kitu kinaendelea. Sasa leo tueleze una mipango gani na kuna kuendelea nini? Asante.
Thank you. Morugara.
Thank you. Thank you. Bwana CS.
Okay.
Tharaka Nithi is one of those counties that actually got no allocation in those tenders. You've given us an explanation. Tharaka Nithi is also notorious for having stored roads in the 3 constituencies. And those 3 roads are in Ichuka Igamba Ng'ombe, we have Chuka Kareni. In Imara constituency, we have Keria Magutuni, and in the Raka constituency, we have Marimanti Chakariga. Can you kindly give an assurance that there is an allocation for those stored roads which have been outstanding for more than 10 years from today? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, those are 8, and they are very short questions. Answer them now.
Mr. Speaker, check for me that route. Mr. Speaker, I'll be quick on Honorable Sunkuli's question, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, I really don't have that answer, Honorable Sunkuli, from my side. We will have to have a honest conversation, all of us. In fact, I would be happy, Mr. Speaker, if you organize at the beginning of next year, if you have organized a session between our ministry and the whole house, a retreat of some sort, to ask ourselves whether the road maintenance levy, the Roads Act as it is, can continue as it is. What are we going to do with KERA? Because the other roads have fairly annual maintenance. What are we going to do with KERA? Is the 10% and 22%, should it continue just maintaining Maram continuously, while the road that used to be Maram has been upgraded to tarmac, should be abandoned completely without any resources being allocated to it. Mr. Speaker, it ends up sometimes under carer to advertise them through the support of this House again, to do the budget, the public participation budget. Sometimes we do something called stage improvement. And that's how the Chebole Road got some money for maintenance that are going to be done. So this thing, one of the reasons why I was excited to come and respond to this question is for us to find ways of addressing these 5,000 kilometers that I have christened abandoned roads or orphaned roads that actually don't have allocation of specific resources for maintenance. Number two, as carer, after discovering that this low volume seal is just counterproductive, carer on its own motion stopped all roads. Even if they were advertised under low volume seal, they instructed the contractors to deliver it to the standard required. It's better we deliver a quarter or a three-quarter instead of delivering full and all of it gets chipped away as we work on the resources. Mr. Speaker, and therefore the road from Kilgoris to Emurwa Dikir faces that challenge, and we are still thinking how to do it. Honorable Tonkei was straightforward, just reminding me that to look at other counties that are marginalized, but it's not just the counties. Narok, for example, is a very vast county. Even if you go to the books and see that they have a good number of tarmac, at least the Segenani one was completed. And the one that comes to Mount Narok. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look at those roads, they are not enough to serve a vast county like Narok or Marsabit or Kajiado, these counties that have a very big land. So indeed, you can do the tarmac and eventually people are still saying we are marginalized because of the vastness of the land. And if you compare it to a smaller county, then it becomes a problem. The next thing is Honorable Kwamboka of Bomola. Yes, you are right. All your roads have stopped, as a matter of fact. Roads of about 10 billion. And you are not the only one. Almost every county has stopped. And I think as I said earlier, it is going to be beneficiary of this program that the ministry, with the support, with the direction and guidance of His Excellency the President, is trying to find resources to be able to deal with it. Honorable Kosgei, as mentioned, Hilary Kosgei of Kipkelion West, has mentioned the question of the road. We will not construct the road, Mr. Speaker, because of to address political issues. The ministry is blind to political sides. We serve both sides of the political divide equally because we are the government of Kenya. But the plan for a road that comes from Ainamoi to Mbogo Valley, all the way, Mr. Speaker, to Nandils has been there for over 10 years. And we completed the design this year, and we are working towards future plans to award resources to make sure that that connectivity is important for access within Nandi County, Kericho County, up to Narok County, and also up to West Pokot and Turkana. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Owen Bayer has asked me about a matter that did not happen in this House. Mr. Speaker, oh yeah, sorry, I'll come back. Garissa, I still have it.
Yes.
Garissa, oh sorry, I'll come back to Garissa. Mr. Speaker, of accusation of impropriety. Mr. Speaker, let me start by two things. One, sometimes when I become a really bit tough, people think you are being arrogant. In the particular situation, Mr. Speaker, a honorable member, even though not a member of this House, stood in public square and told the cabinet secretary of the Republic of Kenya, not of our community, that I should ensure that contracts are not given to people who don't come from his community. And he went further, Mr. Speaker, to say that community are full of witches. And therefore, if you give roads to a contractor from that community, we cannot hold that contractor accountable. Mr. Speaker, despite being called arrogant, I had to tell him off, Mr. Speaker. And he's only one person. There is no other member of parliament I've ever told him off. Because, Mr. Speaker, if I kept quiet, upon translation of that message, Mr. Speaker, that contractors cannot work in certain community, or of certain community cannot be given work, I would have abdicated my responsibility as a public servant. I was expecting that NCIC was going to take a stern action against such honorable members, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the question of 10% or 10 billion, 100 billion, Mr. Speaker, I have left that to my lawyers to address, and any honorable member who has an issue should have gone to the relevant institution to deal with it. But let everyone be informed that, Mr. Speaker, I will continue serving, and I will not instruct any government agency to deny people contracts based on their communities, or I will not superintend over a ministry that denies any community road by virtue of how they voted or their tribe. I will not, and I will not stop that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Garissa, Garissa is one of the marginalized counties, Mr. Speaker. That's a fact. But they are also a beneficiary of a major program we are doing with our development partners. The road from Lamu to Ijara, Mr. Speaker, was badly delivered. And Mr. Speaker, when the president was elected, that's the first project we called the contractor and told the contractor he not only needs to go back to do the work, but that road must be tarmacked. And I believe that once we support that contractor, we'll tarmac. The road from Garissa to Isiolo, Mr. Speaker, is also ongoing at the moment. The road, Mr. Speaker, of Modogashe, the road from Isiolo, Kulamawe, and Kulamawe, Modogashe, the contractor is on site, Mr. Speaker, and has reached almost 10% of the project. There is a good number of projects in the northern part of our country that, if delivered, Mr. Speaker, will help us deal with insecurity and deal with marginalization, because the contract sum is not less than 60 billion, Mr. Speaker. And I invite honorable member, as we continue implementing this project, it includes building of hospitals, it includes fiber optic, it includes building of some of the schools. I came to this house for vetting a year ago. I promised, Mr. Speaker, that I will do everything possible to ensure that the marginalized counties are brought to be part and parcel of our country, particularly the northern part of the country where Al-Shabaab characters are trying to play around, Mr. Speaker. Tarmacking the roads will make sure that there are no IEDs that are going to be hidden below the road, Mr. Speaker, and therefore affect our people. I am confident that in 5 years, Northeastern will not be the same Northeastern we've known. Mr. Speaker, the last is Kisauni. It is not true, even though the contractor is limping, Mr. Speaker, and is a son of that region, Mr. Speaker, or an elder from that region. Mr. Speaker, the contractor is on site. He is always calling carer, coming to my office for purpose of support. So he's there, but he's limping, like many other contractors. And we are going to do everything possible to see how we support them to remain on site. The last thing is Honorable Murugara. Mr. Speaker, it is true that Rakanidi is one of the most marginalized in that regard, and I know your roads, including Chakarika Marimanti, that I went there in 2013, 2014, that has not been delivered. Mr. Speaker, at least you have a road portfolio of about 7 billion. We are doing our best to see that one is completed fast, but we have discussed with you. I don't want to say further on how to survive on connecting the other roads that we have a challenge in Tarakanidi County, Mr. Speaker. The last thing, there is some honorable member who said, Mr. Speaker, that the roads in his county are not progressing, but in Muranga, they are progressing. If you are watching the news, the honorable member from Muranga, Kehongi here, who is my friend for many years when he was a councillor, was on news hammering me because also contractors in his county have stalled. As I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, everybody thinks the neighbor is eating. So the one who is in Muranga thinks that the one in Nandi is getting roads. The one in Nandi thinks it's the one in Homa Bay. The one in Homa Bay thinks the one in Kisumu. So let's not blame each other. We shall be able to deliver these roads if we work together. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You know, for a cow, grass is always green across the fence. Honorable members, just lower your guard. You know, seeing the interest and the time available, I've already done 1 hour, 15 minutes on this question. Can I promise you that upon resumption from recess, I will call a Kamkunji to which this minister can come and respond to your issues? Because even if I give 5, the whole house wants to ask something. I've seen your hands in the air. Mele Odhiambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance. And
The last 5 is the last batch. If you are unlucky, the rain doesn't drop on everybody standing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance, and I want to thank the CS for his response. Mr. Speaker, I also want to just thank the CS for mentioning and acknowledging that the 300 million that was put in Fangano Island was done by the previous administration. And I'm hoping that this administration will therefore ensure that it is tarmacked. But my question is this, Mr. Speaker. I've listened to the CS very carefully. That is putting back the blame to Parliament and also saying that the grass may look greener to somebody in Homa Bay, maybe because I don't know what's happening in Muranga. Now, I sit in the budget committee, so I look at the grass from the budget committee, and I know from the budget committee that there's iniquity. What I would like to ask is that time when he'll be coming for the Kamkunji, can he come with the amount that has been allocated for public participation? Because I'm shocked at the amounts. They are not even in budget committee that you are talking about. Can you come with the amounts that you are talking about being in public participation? The discretionary 7 billion that you have, and the rest of the budget, so that we know whether there's actually equity in every of those allocations.
Thank you.
Because otherwise we'll just be cheating each other here, Mr. Speaker. So can he please avail that for us? Because I know he can't avail it now, but can he avail all that during the Kamkunji? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Osoro. I'll give you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to appreciate Speaker for coming in defense of a community that has been also a subject of the attack across. But that is not the question. The question, Honorable Speaker, to him specifically, while we appreciate and empathize with the economic status of the country and the challenges that, of course, the ministry faces in regard to balancing and reinstating the contractors back to site, there are regions, Honorable Speaker, that construction is ongoing. The road construction has resumed. The stalled projects have resumed, the contractors have resumed work because of the change of their priority from GOK to fuel levy. What criteria does the ministry use to allocate particular roads to fuel levy, which is almost available, and let others remain under GOK, and then engage and wait to engage with development partners across the, abroad, so that they can resume duty? What criteria do they use? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Korere.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to put this question across to the Minister, and I know the Minister understands very well the issue of marginalization and insecurity. He has mentioned the issue of security roads under the budget that is directly comes from his office. Waziri, I want to tell you, yesterday, there was an attack in my constituency by bandits coming from Tiati. And an NPR was injured, and he had to be carried by others for 15 kilometers on their backs because there was no car that could access the road between Mugie to Shuro to bring that fellow to Mowarak for first aid. Waziri, as we talk today, I had to organize this morning for airlifting that person who lost a lot of blood. Right now he's in ICU because a security road I've talked about for the last more than 10 years has never been done. I want to plead with you that if nothing else in Laikipia North, the road between Mugie and Shuro, please, Waziri. We really, otherwise, these fellows will finish us. Finally, the road...
One question at a time.
The road from Nanyuki, neighbor to Doldol. Waziri, we know when you talk about marginalization, I think Laikipia North will qualify to be the marginalized of marginalized. That road is 65 kilometers. It has been awarded and cancelled for the last 10 years. As we speak today, Waziri, coming from Nanyuki to Doldol will take you 4 hours because that road is completely unmotorable.
Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, in the House
What
of
is
Rule.
it, Kamket? What is it? I'm not going to give you any. Tiati is not Kamket and Kamket is not Tiati. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Honorable Speaker.
And we are not holding you responsible for the attacks from Tiati. It's just a place. Go on.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, in the House of Rules and Records. The CS and members could be forgetting this, indicted this House and said the imbalance in distribution of roads was courtesy of the House. He did not withdraw, but he did not table the list of imbalances that have been caused by this House. It's very important that for us to also reprieve and vindicate ourselves, the CS tables to you, Honorable Speaker, the list of imbalances that we caused in the so-called public participation roads. Finally, Honorable Speaker, in the same spirit of imbalance, a road was made 5 years between Kombewa and Maseno. And the bit just stopped in the side of Nyanza. The part that remains in Muhaya and Luanda has remained for the last 6 years. Could the CS speak on this? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Member for Wajir South.
Thank you very much, Mr.
This is the
Speaker.
last batch, Waziri.
Actually, it's baffling to hear the pampered parts of the country complaining about marginalization. What are we to say, those of us from northeastern Kenya,
ask your question,
which is a monument for marginalization? Mr. Speaker, my question is, there is a difference between bad roads and no roads. What we have in northeastern Kenya are no roads. We cannot even describe them as roads. As we speak, 3.5 weeks is what it's, for the last 3.5 weeks, no vehicle has entered my constituency. And we keep hearing from the government promises that they will deliver the Horn of Africa Gateway project, which many people in Northeastern today believe is a hoax.
Member.
The road is 50 kilometers away from Wajir. When are we going to see contractors on the ground building that road, which the people of northeastern Kenya have been waiting for the past 60 years? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Cynthia Muge. Give her the mic.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to appreciate you, the Chair, and the President of the Republic of Kenya for making it possible for the CSS to appear before this House and answer serious and pertinent questions. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I was part of the people that went to the office of the CS, whom he says 26 counties have been there, and he was not generous with information and data, but I want to appreciate him for being fair today. My question, Honorable Speaker, is that what exactly is emergency? Because when I look at the road that was considered under emergency in Nandi County, I fail to understand what is emergency. On that question again, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask the CS, what measures is he putting in place to ensure that this emergency, whatever it means, is not used to perpetuate iniquity in the allocation of road funds, Honorable Speaker?
Member, is it Kimilu? Kimilu. Yes, you are Kimilu, right? Yeah, give to Kimilu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the CS, from my desk, Mr. Speaker, I wrote 8 letters to the CS, and he has never answered any letter concerning the road from Sultan Ahmud, which connects Kajiado and Makueni through Kilungu. And Mr. Speaker, that road was started 2016, and only 3 kilometers, which has not been done up to date. I want to know the CS, why is he not responding to my letters and the measures he's taking, because now the road is completely cut off at a place called Kikoko, and it's not passable, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Minister, honorable members, we must have a cutoff. Minister, can you answer those 8 interventions? Order, Ruku, take your seat.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
And the general questions, Minister, marginalization,
and
inadequate resources, inequitable distribution.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, yes, the question asked by my friend Honorable Mili regarding the roads that we supported in Fangano Island, Mr. Speaker, through the emergency funding. Again, Mr. Speaker, Fangano Island is one of the marginalized places. No single road, no access to the highland. And Mr. Speaker, we thought it is one of the places that should have emergency support. The plans were done in the previous administration, but was not supported. So when I got to office, Mr. Speaker, I had a choice to sign for allocation of those resources or to go back to the political cocoons, Mr. Speaker, of saying the MP is from this party or the region is this region, and withdraw signing those resources. Instead, Mr. Speaker, being a nationalist and being a public servant, I did what is right to be done by making sure that Fangano Island gets its rightful share. And it's not Fangano Island only. Honorable Mili knows that there are further resources supporting more roads in Homa Bay that we have supported. Mr. Speaker, on the question of, so I agree that the report, which was a question for Honorable Mboko Milema and Honorable Milson here, Millie Odhiambo, is that, Mr. Speaker, I just don't want to say the information is with the same budget committee that Honorable Millie sits in. Actually, it's the budget you passed yourselves. If the budget policy office was to be asked today to bring it and print for every member of parliament, you would have it in this house. In fact, I will struggle more to get that report than yourselves. But nevertheless, since I respect the orders of this house, and as has been requested by members of parliament, I will table that report to the house based on the directives. Mr. Speaker, it is not true. The majority whip, Mr. Speaker, said some places the roads are ongoing under RMLF. It is not allowed, Mr. Speaker, for road maintenance levy to support fully development. What happens is that there is a process called stage improvement that we try to support. And sometimes it is for the roads that have been worn out that are actually being maintained. It rarely happens that you start from zero a road using road maintenance levy. But there are cases like the one I said of Lamu, where because of outright marginalization, we end up doing it because we want to make sure that those people and those areas and some places where there are security problems so that we can bring them to the stage where all of us must be. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Honorable Sarah Korere, it is true. I am very much aware, Mr. Speaker, about the road from Churo, Mukie, Amaya, Tangul Bay, up to Chemalingot, Loruk, up to Loruk actually, both requested by Honorable Sarah Korere and Honorable Kamket. This is a very strategic road, Mr. Speaker. I have been saying between that road and the one that goes to Kapedo and then Lokichar, Mr. Speaker, we should be able to ask our development partners to support us. If we do those 2 roads, we will have dealt a big blow to banditry and bandits in this republic. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I will be submitting this proposal to our development partners to try to support us in the same project that I've been doing in the roads that are in the northern part of the country. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Dol Dol Road, it is true. We will do everything, as I have already explained to the Honorable Member elsewhere, to see how we can support. And Honorable Kiunjuri was also one of the members that came to ask this question before in my office. On the question of Kombere Maseno Road, there was no, Mr. Speaker, deliberate decision to separate the people of Nyanza and the Western by doing only Kisumu and supporting the other side. It's just that the contractor stopped somewhere near the border to Mwaya. Mr. Speaker, as soon as we get the resources, it is part of the rubric of the roads we support. He will continue to complete the road to its logical end. On the Wajir constituency, I want to assure the Honorable Member that most of the Horn of Africa projects, the contractors have now been identified, they are going on site, and that, Mr. Speaker, the remaining that one we re-advertised and one that is about to be advertised will change the northeastern part of the country. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Cynthia Muge, my friend, has raised a very important issue as far as emergency fund. It is true that in one of his projects in our county, we supported through emergency funding, particularly in a place where there is a TTC and MTC and everything, and things were a problem in Mosoriot, Mr. Speaker. I will make sure that this is not going to happen in other parts of the country or across the country, that it's not going to be dispersed marginally. What we did in Mosoriot, Honorable Cynthia, is exactly what we did in Fangano Island to support places, because particularly Nandi County, when I realized that they had not got any new project for many years, we had to support Mosoriot Township roads, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we address that marginalization. And for avoidance of doubt, Mr. Speaker, because this debate has been going on for long, Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, roads that have stalled since 2014. Mr. Speaker, the roads that connect, that are in Tinderet constituency and Mosob constituency, Mr. Speaker, and Chesumei, we have re-advertised those roads in a very short time. And we thank the Attorney General for cooperating with my office to allow us to re-advertise those roads to get a good contractor, Mr. Speaker, who is going to deliver. I know some of their local leaders have said they don't want contractors from certain countries. But, Mr. Speaker, my business is to make sure that we get a contractor that has the capacity to deliver roads for the people of Nandi. I am not in the business of knowing, Mr. Speaker, or facilitating friends of politicians or individuals to get contracts. My business is to tell the agency, use proper tendering process and get us contractors who can get the people of Nandi from the morass and the problems they have had from 2014, and not to please certain individuals who have certain contractors who are in their pockets, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, the Sultanahmud Road, I am reliably informed, Mr. Speaker, that this is also one of those roads that have waited for far too long to get the support of the government. And I want to inform you, Honorable Kimilu, that the first thing I want to say is that all letters from members of parliament, we mark it to the relevant office of the PS, and we put all the requests on a dashboard to make sure that we track and implement. The only problem is that I get at least 200-300 letters. Maybe we have not been able. Sometimes an MP writes a letter and writes a reminder. So maybe the mistake on our side is not replying back to the members of parliament. But as a matter of fact, every single letter that comes from honorable member, and whether from this House or Senate or other leaders in the country, are documented, and it informs the prioritization of the roads. And for your road in the Sultanahmud, we are now assessing it for purpose of restoration, at least because of this El Nino situation. As you know, El Nino at the moment is affecting Northeastern, Coast, and Upper Eastern, and the Lower Eastern. All those places, the initial assessment is that we need about 15 billion first to restore the road. That is why the 1 billion we got from contingency fund, we are just using it to make sure that we connect counties. And that's why the place in Abaswein there, Kotulo to Mandera. I was in Garissa the other day. Today, if you see the news today or you get the information from social media, the road in Lamu, connecting Lamu to Mombasa, has been destroyed because of the rains. And so we will continue assessing it. Eventually, we will now sit down and say, what is there from emergency fund? What can we come back to this house to try to allocate for purpose of restoration of our roads? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm afraid we have to end here. I'm sorry to all those members who have burning questions. I've assured you I'll give you a kamkunji with this minister, and I'll give you time to ask each and every conceivable question. Some members have come here with very burning issues and very genuine and legitimate concerns, and time is not on our side now. We have spent almost 1.5 hours on one question. Let's move to the next order. Yes, Minister?
Speaker, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here. I know there was a specific question sent to me regarding Mau Mau roads, Mr. Speaker. It falls within all these roads that are pending across the country are the same. And we do not discriminate on any road because it is Mau Mau or it is any other road. I don't know, Christian, whatever. We are going to support all these roads as soon as we get the resources. And no part of the country has received more consideration than the other. And even as Honorable Mukunji has been pushing me, we will make sure that we compensate those we need to be compensated. We also check some counties like Embu, that though neighboring counties have Mau Mau roads, is one of also the marginalized counties in that region. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I seriously beg you, Mr. Speaker, this is a formal setting. But if next year you can put for us a day, we have an informal setup to discuss the future of our roads with the honorable members, we will be very grateful from the ministry side.
Get in touch with my office.
I
then
thank you,
we'll
Mr. Speaker.
agree on the program and the timing. Honorable members, yes, can I hear your suggestion? Jared?
Honorable Speaker, a very quick one. When I firstly saw the list which has generated debate here, I firstly thought that it was fake. And I believed at worst that the minister was going to distance himself from this list. But he has owned it. Honorable Speaker, this is my suggestion. Because it has been demonstrated here beyond doubt that there was a lot of inequalities in the distribution of these roads, why can't the minister go back and cancel everything so that we begin on a new slate, Honorable Speaker? Just like CDF, which cuts across all constituencies within the Republic of Kenya. Why can't we adopt this model? Because even with the upsurge of El Nino flooding now, Honorable Speaker, Bungoma, where you come from, and I was shocked that even the third in command's county was left out of this scheme, Honorable Speaker. Why can't we start from afresh, have all those tenders already given out, cancelled, so that we have equal distribution of these monies? Because with El Nino, each and every place in this country is now under a lot of attack on those roads, Honorable Speaker. Nyando constituency, so as I finish, Honorable Speaker, Nyando is not...
Thank you. We will prosecute all this in the Kamkunji. Thank you, Jared, for mentioning my county. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Jared is my friend, and I think I ably prosecuted the part of the question until members have agreed that we need to sit together and see the public participation resources. So on the question of floods, we will make sure that we will not distribute equally. We will have to distribute based on the damage, because this is a restoration fund. We must deal, the roads that are going to be affected most must receive the highest resources. And as you can see now, the northeastern part and parts of Nyanza, and as I said, upper eastern, lower eastern, and coast are the most affected in the country. We hope that in the next 1 month, we don't have also highest El Nino roads on the western part of the country, because as I have told you, we cannot carry the burdens that come with this El Nino any further with the resources, the little resources we have.
Thank you, CS. You may now take your leave. Honorable members, you remember I informed the House that the Honorable Alice Nganga and Honorable Sheikh will be given 15 minutes each to address the House. We now go to that, which is still at statement level. Between the two of you, who goes first? Honorable Alice Nganga or